So hearing this read the first time through, let's start a little bit differently. What's your emotional response to what you're hearing? A lot of beautiful poetic language in this text. Now it's talking about a very literal and practical event, but it's using very poetic language. So it allows itself to be heard both as a historical reality and as a poetic, prophetic word that speaks to the heart. So what's your emotional response when you hear things like strengthening the feeble? Hopeful, yeah. Good. For those one-word ones, I'll just repeat them. And yeah, Steve?
Yeah, just it says in verse 2, even with joy and singing, the glory of Lebanon shall be given into it, the excellence of Carmel and Sharon. And they shall see the glory of the Lord. And just to say, without bragging too much, but when we're at Carmel,
yeah,
where Elijah up on the mount there, we went to the top and we looked over the land, and it was absolutely breathtaking. And then we went through the desert areas, absolutely breathtaking. And in some of these verses it also says, strengthen the weak hands and make the feeble knees, make firm. So I see a lot of healing as well in these verses.
Yes.
Just the poetic beauty of the Word of God and the magnificence of seeing physically, literally, let alone spiritually, the glory of God.
Amen. Yeah, well
just
done.
The glory of God in this chapter. It's beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's great, Steve. Thank you. Okay, so again, what's your emotional response as we listen to the text?
I remember like the desert, we were rejoicing blossom like the crocus, mindfulness crocus, like the notice that Steve said, the rose.
Yes.
I thought just that beautiful, blooming, that springtime, that refreshing, that new season kind of thing, for me is quite beautiful as well. And not to fear, it says, be strong, do not fear, your God will come, he will come with vengeance, with divine retribution, he will come to save you. It's pretty neat.
It is beautiful. Karen?
I really loved in my mind the things that came to mind. First of all, the beauty of the rose and its blossoming. But also, I saw a video of when the rains really hit the ground and the dry, parched ground, and how it would just flow and pick up, and the momentum was so fast. And it just had this incredible surging of power, but also that pulling, it pulled on the flat areas. And it was quite a dramatic time for everybody who was standing there because it just came suddenly. Yeah.
I'm just reading out of King James Version. And in 7, I'm a bit confused. I think Pastor Stephen referred to in the habitation of jackals. Is that right? I think that's what he said.
Yep.
Here it says, in the habitation of dragons, where each lay shall be grass.
Yeah, the Hebrew is Tanaim. Tanaim is serpents. So, yeah, jackal's not an accurate translation, I'm afraid. If it were a game show, I'll accept serpents or dragons. No, it's not kimono dragons. Okay, I want to ask you that same question again after I've read through the text, just from the translation straight from the Hebrew. So I want to read through it again for you. Just listen, don't put any pressure on yourself. What I'm going to ask you is, what's your emotional response to this when you hear this? And then we'll take another run through, just verse by verse, and tease out the context, the history, the culture of the text. Yesusum Rejoice, Midbar, wilderness, from the word. And Tziyah, dryness. And be glad, Arava, desert plain. V'tifrach, and blossom as a rose, meadow saffron, crocus. Paroach, budding, sprouting, tifrach, bud, sprout. And be glad with Gilad, joy, and overcome, shout. Kivod, the glory of Har Lebanon, the witness, Netanlah, will be given to her. Hadar, the splendor of Har Carmel, the garden land, and Har Sharon. They will see Chevod Adonai, the glory of Hashem, the splendor of Eloheinu, our God, our judge. Chazeku, strengthen you, Yadim, the hands of Raphot, the weak, and the knees of Koshelot, the stumbling ones. Make strong, alert, courageous, brave, bold, solid, secure. Say to them that have an anxious, hurried, fearful lev, core being, Chizku, be strong. Don't fear. Hinei, behold, Elohechem, your God, your judge, Nakam, with vengeance will come. With a recompense, Elohim, God the judge. Hu Yavo v'yoshachem. He will come and save you. Plural. Then opened will be the eyes of the blind, and the ears of the deaf will be unstopped. Then leaping like a deer, a lame man, and overcoming, shouting, Leshon, the tongue, language of the dumb, silent, mute. Kinivkel, for breaking open, tearing, Bamidbar, in the wilderness, in and from the word, Mayim, waters. A nechalem, and a torrent, Ba'arava, in the steep desert. And it has come to pass, Hasharav, the burning, scorched ground, mirage, will become a troubled pool, and the thirsty ground, springs of Mayim, of waters. In the habitation that is a shepherd's hut, of Tanim, serpents, where each lay, shall be grass, leeks, herbs, with reeds and rushes. And it has come to pass, Sham, there, Maslul, a highway, Vaderech, and a way, Vederech HaKodesh, and the way of the holiness. She will be called, and no unclean, impure thing will pass over it. But he will be for those, Cholech, going forth, Derech, away. V'evelem, that fools will not err in, wander from. There will not come there any lion, nor any ravenous animal shall go up there. It shall not be found there, and walking the redeemed. And the ransomed of Hashem, who is mercy, Yeshuvun, will return and come to Sion, parched land. Berina, with shrill ringing cries, overcoming, and joy olam, everlasting. Al Osham, upon their heads, sason, gladness, vesimcha, and joy, they will obtain, take hold of, and flee grief, sorrow, anguish, and sighing, groaning. Baruch Hashem. What's your emotional response having heard that a third time? What are you hearing? What else are you hearing now? Obviously, maybe it's a little bit harder to follow the way I read it, but I just want to try and convey it as accurately as possible from the Hebrew. Bat sheli, ma koreh?
Makes the word that came to mind was supported. Like
What, sorry?
supported.
Supported. You felt supported by it? That's great.
And kind of like, because in our world we don't know how things are going to go, but outside of time and space, God knows all. So
That's great.
it just feels just leaves.
Supported in the sense that you know God's got it all in hand.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. It's great, Kinsey. Thank you.
It was a verse about the foolish people not taking the highway.
That verse, what that verse is saying is that those who were once foolish, who take the highway, won't be able to go in error. So it's saying those who were once foolish, who choose to take this highway, such will be the transformative quality of the highway that they won't be able to go into error.
I guess that ties back to the New Testament about the one who is through the Father that's set through the way.
Absolutely, sure, absolutely. I certainly think that the derech here is intrinsically connected to ha-derech, the way of our faith. Absolutely.
Because I suppose that in verse 5, you know, and that probably was what I was highlighted to, is the eyes of the blind should be opened, the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped, the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the dumb shall sing, and the waters will burst forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. So it's for everything that that is bound up and imprisoned and trapped is being set free.
Awesome.
Is being healed. Yeah. So
That's great.
and that strengthens faith. That strengthens faith for me, because when I look at things that I see that seem, how is this possible, Lord? When I feel like there's those who are so in so much unbelief.
Yes.
And yet, when I read that, it's saying, no, the eyes are going to be opened.
Yeah.
And for me, especially, where it says the lame shall leap like a deer, it's close to my heart.
Amen.
For it's a prayer that I have for family member.
Bezrat Hashem
To see
ve'amen.
that which looks so impossible as possible to God.
Amen. Well said, Rabbi. And we agree with your prayer in Yeshua's name. Bezrat Hashem b'shem Yeshua Mashiach. Amen ve'amen. Lebanon here is something you need to understand, that the Hebrew in this text isn't referring to the country Lebanon to the north of Israel. There's a mountain in Israel called Ha-Lebanon. So it's referring to a location within Israel that is or was and has been famous for its forestation. So very strong, thickly forested mountain. So it's meant to give us a sense of that fruitfulness of the land again. You notice that it's joined in with all those other fruitful sort of comparisons. Ha Carmel, the garden of fruitfulness, you know. Sharon, the another area between the middle of Israel and Yaakov, and in between there's a fruitful area, a pasture land. So all three of those are meant to convey this idea of fruitfulness, all of them within the context of the land of Israel. So really it's saying all of Israel will be affected by this regeneration. You know, the road will come a certain way, but it's in fact all of Israel will become fruitful. And Levanon, the Evrit, it means witness. So for us, that has special connotation as well. That in a sense, this mountain is witnessing the events of Hashem, and every matter must be established by 2 witnesses. Well, there are 3 witnesses. HaKarmel, Levanon, HaSharon. Okay, so 2 is firmly established, 3 is immutable. This is a very firm thing that Hashem is speaking through his prophet. Shall we step through sort of a verse at a time? Let's give some background. You'll notice I've jumped. We did chapter 32 last week, and we jumped a couple of chapters to chapter 35. Essentially leading up to this chapter, we have what is really the epilogue of what we would call the book of woes. So that's the part of Isaiah where almost every chapter begins with, Oi! Woe! And so this is the epilogue to that. And just prior to this chapter, we read of the destruction and desolation of Edom. Now, Edom was, born of Esau and a direct enemy to Jacob. So Edom was an enemy of Israel. But more importantly, in Hebrew prophetic literature, Edom is symbolic of all those things and all those nations that resist God and his people. So, in a sense, it sometimes correlates to the same sort of understanding we have of Babylon as a representation of the sort of chief place of where evil reigns, So Edom is left desolate, dry, barren, okay? And then here comes this chapter 35. And Israel, who was dry, is made fruitful, abundant. Okay, so this is kind of the culmination of those woes, the redemption of Israel. So really this chapter is talking about, a return that's been in the longing Jewish heart for generations. And in the physical is partly seen in 1948, That's why we have our national anthem. As long as deep in the heart of a Jew, the soul yearns, looking to where? Sion. From what word? Siyah, Sion. This chapter begins, verse 1, we hear the word Siyah, parched, dry. And it ends in verse 10. Who's the subject of verse 10? Sion. Parched land. The once parched land has become a fruitful, redeemed land, hasn't it? And those who walk in the path toward it are the redeemed. The redeemed of Hashem are the ones who walk. So let's take a read through verse 1. Yesusum, rejoice, midbar. We talked about wilderness, me from devar, the word. Rejoice from the word, or wilderness. And Siyah. Well, Siyah is Zion. And all those who live in her, and all those who are of her. So God is using this dryness, this desert place, as being a picture of, or a personification of, the people of Zion. And be glad, Arava, desert plain, and blossom. And I like the meadow saffron translation, because I think of something that's not just pretty but also fragrant. Meadow saffron. I guess a rose qualifies too. Paroah. Now the start of the next verse, verse 2, kind of doubles up. And English commentators would foolishly sometimes say it uses the redundant language. Because in English you don't tend to double up. You don't say, I'm happy, happy. Unless you're in a cartoon. I remember a song, Happy, Happy, Joy, Joy, or something like that. But you don't tend to do that in English, so we would say it's redundant. But it's not correct to call the Hebrew redundant phrasing. The Hebrew intends it to be there. And the reason it's used is to ensure the reader understands this is firmly established. So it literally says budding, sprouting, budding, sprouting. in the Hebrew. It says it twice. And this is a way of talking about abundance and something that God has firmly established. And be glad with joy. And most of the versions I heard read tonight would then say with joy and singing. Is that right? Would that be correct? Yeah. But actually, I think that's a bit... it's unfair to give you the word singing, because actually the Hebrew word ranan, ranan, which means and, it actually means to overcome, and then it can mean, in the sense of overcoming, to shout. And so in a figurative sense you could use singing, but really more literally it means overcome and at best shout. So it's more than just singing. You know, this picture of be joyful and sing. Well, it's great to sing when you're joyful, but this has more chutzpah. Be joyful and shout. Be joyful and overcome. That's what the text is saying. Not be joyful and sing a little ditty, okay, or whatever. It's from a root which I've written down here. Ranan. So ranan literally means to overcome. And so the form we have it in is it has the sense of overcoming and shouting rather than singing. And then after that we have kivod, the glory of Ha-Lebanon, the glory of the witness. We could read that, because that's what Lebanon means, witness. So we could say the glory of the witness. Netala will be given to her. Well, who's the her, do you think? She was personified in verse 1. It's Israel. It's ethnic Israel. We've got to put this all in context. Hadar, the splendor. So we've used the word glory, kivod, which is more of a supernatural term. And then now we have the splendor of Carmel, Hadar. It could be used of a supernatural entity, but really there's the sense that it's talking about the beauty of the natural world here. So the glory of God and the beauty of the natural world, the splendor of Har Carmel, the garden land. And Steve was talking about looking down from Mount Carmel down into that area of land that's full of pasture. And Sue and David and Julia and I drove through that pasture land on our way going up to Akko in the north when we were in Israel. And we also saw how rich that pasture land was, how green and well cropped it was. So again, this is an abundance that's being talked about. And Har Sharon, and I explained that that's a plain that's north of Yaakov and between the central mountains of Israel and the Mediterranean coast. So again, this is a very rich land full of pasture. You notice that with all that blooming, they will see Chevod Adonai, the glory of Adonai. So the point of all this is not to give them crops, but to direct them to the glory of Adonai, mercy, and the splendor of Eloheinu, our judge. This is supposed to draw our attention to the glory of mercy and the splendor of our judge. So there's an understanding that his mercy for us who follow him, and here for ethnic Israel, precedes his judgment. You understand what I'm saying? His mercy for those who accept him precedes his judgment. This is why we walk with confidence before God, because if we accept Yeshua, if we accept Jesus, then we know that he has already chosen to show us mercy forever. So when we come, because every person who's ever lived will be judged, make no mistake, we will all be judged for our actions. The difference for those who accept Yeshua and his sacrifice of love is that we can be assured that regardless of that judgment, we are safe, because he will stand at that judgment and say, I paid the price for this one. This one is my child. Mercy, the mercy of Yeshua, of God, precedes his judgment. Okay, and this is why both names are used, Yud-He Vav-He and also Eloheinu. Next verse 3. I love this verse because it reminds me at the end of every book of the Torah, we say, Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek. That's got chutzpah. Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek. It means be strong, and be strengthened. Once and twice is unmovable, and 3, well, that's le'olam vayed. Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek. Be strong, and be strengthened. So this comes and says, Chazechu, strengthen you, Yadim, the hands of the weak, and the knees of the stumbling ones make strong, alert, courageous, and brave. Strengthen the hands. What do the hands mean? What do they symbolize? Sorry? Working, absolutely right. Well said, Rabbi. Actions. The hands are our actions. If our actions are weak, they're probably the actions of wickedness. But if our actions are strong and steady, they're the actions of righteousness. Strengthen those unsteady hands that sometimes do good but sometimes don't. Those unsteady hands that flail back and forth between good and bad. Strengthen them. Make them righteous. And it's interesting, it says, make courageous or strong the stumbling knees. Interesting, eh? What do we use our legs for? Walking, halacha, halach, walking, the way we walk. So make that way courageous, strong, bold, brave. That's talking about righteousness, walking in righteousness. I love this next verse, verse 4, because I suffer from some of these things myself. Say to them that have an anxious, hurried, fearful live. Corby. Am I the only one here who's ever felt anxious? Am I the only one here who's ever hurried towards something, not taking time to think it through, but desperate to see it come to fruition, even though it might not have been the best thing for me? Am I the only one here who in all those things was fearful? But God says to us, we who are anxious, we who are hurried about life, who don't take time to rest, and because of all these things, we who are fearful, thank God he doesn't say, oh, just suck it up. You know, it's all in your head. Tell me you haven't met those people. No, God doesn't say that. God says to you who are anxious, hurried, and fearful, right in the core of your being, Chizku, be strong. Don't be afraid. Why not? Hinei, behold, Elohechem, your judge, your God, with vengeance will come, with recompense. Elohim, your judge, hu yavo ve'yosha'achem, he will come to save you. I have this picture of this fierce warrior coming to save me. I'm not afraid. He told me not to be afraid. He's coming to make war against my anxiousness, my hurriedness, my fear. He's coming to make war against it and to silence it. And he's promised he will come to save you. Cool thing about this scripture is He has come, and He will come. You understand what I'm saying? He has come to Israel, Yeshua, Jesus. He came to the earth to die on the cross, to rise again, so that we'd have blood sacrifice to cover all our sin. So He has come to save us, and He will come. How will He come? Well, He came the first time as the Prince of Peace, Sar Shalom. The Prince of Peace will come this time, the second time, dressed in the garments of war. Lebeot. Do you understand me? I'm saying it again. Think about it carefully. We're talking about how do we understand the character of God. Why should I not be afraid when everything is against me, when someone might come to do me harm? What is it that would make me unafraid? Well, some weak, feeble person coming in the room and saying, "Don't hurt my friend," and trying to push away all these mighty men would not at all help my fear, I'm afraid. But a warrior, fierce for me, rushing in and cutting down my enemies, that would start to take away my fear. That would start to quiet me. So listen carefully. Yeshua has come as the Prince of Peace. He allowed them to kill Him. And the first time He didn't literally sit on His throne. But He will come and save. See, Isaiah is prophesying beyond us. He will come and save. How will He come? With vengeance. With recompense. As a judge, He will come and save you. And the you is not singular, it's you. You people. First of all, ethnic Israel, but also all those who would accept the Messiah. Verse 5, "Then opened will be the eyes of the blind, and the ears of the deaf will be unstopped." And we all know that Yeshua literally did this. But we also know that He offers to do this spiritually. To open the eyes of the spiritually blind. To unstop the ears of the spiritually deaf. Then leaping like a deer, a lame man. Yeshua did this literally. He can still do it today. Will He? That's up to Him. He can. But also spiritually. When we're in a lame spiritual situation, He can heal us of that. So that we leap. Notice it doesn't say standing up and doing a little jig like a lame man. Notice it doesn't say walking off kind of happy with a little skip in my step like a lame man. It says leaping like a deer. Leaping. I like the next part because of the way the Hebrew says it. V'ta'on, and overcoming, shouting, leshon. And we can say the tongue of the silent. Okay? So, think about that. Overcoming and shouting, the tongue of the silent. That's the miracle right there. The one who couldn't speak will be shouting. That's the miracle. But we can also read overcoming, shouting, the language of the silent. Because the Hebrew can be read either way. And I'm going to go into a real off-book remez, an off-book mystery here. Because for me, I think this very thing has happened to the Hebrew language. Because there were years there through the Hellenization of the known world where the Hebrew language, we were actually told we weren't allowed to speak it, and we would teach our children in private. We always used it for worship, so it was always there. But it wasn't always a language that was heard. In many ways, it had become historically silent. Right? So in a way, it becomes silent or dumb. But this promise came to pass. The rejuvenation of the Hebrew language and the modern state of Israel. In fact, did you know that the Scots, worried about the fact that Gaelic was dying out, looked around the world for someone who had managed to re-energize and breathe life into a language, and they looked to Israel. 6.5 million Jews speaking Ivrit. And they said, these guys can help us. Because in the space of just a couple of decades, their entire nation is speaking a language that up till then, many of them had not spoken. Amazing, eh?
Rabbi,
Yes. Where are we? Achi.
there was a man by the name of Eleazar ben Yehudin who woke one night
Amen.
saying that God had asked him to rewrite the Hebrew language for the modern day world.
Yeah.
There were no words for pen or rocket,
That's right.
tank, and machine gun. And when he was challenged, why did you do this? He was able to reply that the Hebrew language was a pure language of God, and that man and God could speak in agreement with one consent. And every year where his memorial, his plaque is put up in the boulevard, his brothers go down there, use a crowbar and tear it out. And I've seen that.
Yeah.
And I'm always moved whenever, even tonight, at the many nights I've been here,
Todah.
my co-markers will say to me, why do you go there and not here anymore? And I say to them, well, this is something that I believe is the genuine article. I believe I've been searching as a Sabbatarian all my life. And this young man, Yaakov, has introduced us to, and I use some of my fire language.
Awesome.
And I say to them, it's the first time I've ever seen the Pacific Ocean, and he's taken us out there. We've never been out there before in our lives. And it's doing our head in, and he says, I'm going to teach you, Ty, how to swim in this. And I'm terrified. And that's how I feel my training
Thank you,
in
Ty.
your direction. I'm honoured to be here.
Those are courageous words. Thank you, Ty. Those are courageous words. Baruch Hashem. Yeah, he's a hero of mine, that man. You know, his whole family paid the price for his commitment to that language. They weren't allowed to speak any other language. The children had to stay in the home until the neighbourhood started using the language colloquially. They weren't allowed out of the house. They were only allowed to hear Ivrit from morning to evening until it became so ingrained in them that it began to permeate through the community he lived in and then through the nation. And because of that family sacrifice, the Hebrew language caught fire in Israel. And you know, you've been, Ty. It's alive. It's living. Baruch Hashem. Thanks, Ty. I really appreciate it. Courageous words. For breaking open, tearing, Bamidbar, in the wilderness, waters. This is not just waters starting to trickle. This is waters that burst forth, break open the earth. And the Hebrew says, U nechalim. U nechalim. It's not stream. Okay, it's not stream. The most impressive stream in the world cannot convey what the Hebrew is saying. Think torrent. You understand me? Torrent. Because friends, this is not a stream, either trickling or otherwise. It is a torrent. And again, Sue and David will remember, and Julia, unseasonal rain came to Israel when we arrived. And blessing came with it. This is the tradition. It's the tradition that this rain, which hadn't come at that time of year for how long, David? 25 years. It had not rained in Israel at that time of year for 25 years. And the Mizrahim that we were having Shabbat with were getting us to drink the water. They had collected it because there was a special blessing if you drank the water. Now, you might call that superstitious, but the point is they saw it as a sign of blessing. And we had come wearing the shoes of Yeshua. Sadly, when that rain came, there was flooding in the Negev, and a whole group of young pre-IDF teens were killed because of the torrents of water that swept across the Negev. Torrents is what this is talking about. Now here's the thing. You have to be prepared for a torrent. You have to be prepared. The scripture goes on to say, no unclean thing will walk this highway. Folks, we have to be prepared for what God is about to do. Because no unclean thing can walk this highway. Verse 7, and it has come to pass, Hasharav, the burning mirage. Okay, so this is something you see in the heat, the wavering heat of the desert. And you think, wow, there's a beautiful pool of water and there's palm trees. And you run up to it and there's nothing there. That's what the false gods were for Israel. They were a beautiful pool of water, a mirage. And they offered so much. And in our dryness, we ran up to them, but they were worthless. They had no water. There was no shade in them. The mirage will become a pool of water. Troubled water means water that is full of life. Okay? Water that's moving because it's teeming with life. And the thirsty ground will become springs of mayim, of water. In the habitation, now this is interesting, in the habitation, which is like a shepherd's hut. So we've got a shepherd's hut where tanim, serpents, had been shepherding. You hear me? A shepherd's hut, where, and what he's saying is, where once there was a shepherd's hut where serpents were shepherding, tanim, there will now be herbs, leeks. The fresh water will bring produce where there were once serpents. And if we take a look at this word for habitation, benvet, for the shepherd's hut, what we see is that there were serpents shepherding Israel, but that God was going to and is going to remove those false shepherds. And we know that the rightful shepherd will take his place. Le'olam va'ed, forever, eternally. Verse 8, and it has come to pass, there a highway. Now, maslul is not derech. Lul, it's a highway, an unmistakable way. It's the kind of highway that if you kind of knew you had to go somewhere toward it to find it, it will just stand out. You'll know you've come to it because it'll be the highway, the only one that looks that wide and that long and that big. That's why we use the word maslul. A highway, vaderech, and a way. Well, why say that? Of course it's a way, it's a highway. Why are you telling me and a way? Because it's not just a physical road, it's a way of life. And just in case you're confused, because I've only said it's a way, I'm going to say again. I'm going to say, vaderech vederech hakodesh. A way and the way of holiness. So this highway is more than just a physical road. This is a spiritual direction and a spiritual way of life. And you guys know we are called Haderech. We are called the way. That's what they called us in the beginning. There goes those guys. They're part of the Jewish sect, the way. I think we're going to start getting called that again, actually. I bet there's people around you guys who go, oh yeah, those crazies go to some Jewish sect on a Friday night. I'm not sure they're Christians anymore, actually. They're going to some Jewish sect called the Way. But that's who we were in the beginning. Haderech. And Isaiah knew about it 700 odd years before Yeshua was born. He knew about the way. I wouldn't be surprised if the brother saw Paul the Apostle in his visions. I wouldn't be surprised if he heard the echoes of the future saying, oh, these guys that follow the way, they're fakakta. The way of holiness will be called. And, listen, no unclean, impure thing will pass over it. What that means is that no unclean or pure thing will actually be allowed even to come onto it. Pass over it like al upon. It means an unclean thing can walk right up to that big highway, but it won't be able to go any further. It won't be able to navigate along it, through it, over it, on it. No unclean thing. Good news. But it will be for those cholech. This is from like halacha. Those who are going, those who are walking in it. It'll be for you who choose it. It'll be for you. Those who go forth, derech, away, ve'evelim. And even those of us like me, who are fools, or have been fools, even we won't be able to find our way off of it. Do you understand? This is talking about salvation. When you accept Yeshua, you have done all that's necessary. The work of salvation is His. If you start to go off to the edge of that road, He will discipline your tukas. Because not even a fool will be able to get off this road of salvation. Why? Because it's reliant on Him, not us. Baruch Hashem. 9. There will not come there any lion nor any ravenous animal. This means any animals of prey, and what it means is there will be no death. There will not come there any lion or ravenous animal, nor shall a ravenous animal go up there. They shall not be found in it. But those who will be found in it are the redeemed. So the redeemed will walk in it. The redeemed will walk in it. How do I know if I'm walking on this way? Have I accepted Yeshua? God says, I see that you're sinful. How about if I give myself? How about if I give my blood? That's who Yeshua is. And He says, if you'll accept what I've done for you, if you'll say, Yeshua, I accept what you've done for me, then you're redeemed. And you'll be walking in this way. It's that simple. It's the beginning of something, though. It's not the end of something. It's the beginning of something. Verse 10. And the ransomed of Hashem. Again, God paid the ransom for us. It's like I said, His mercy precedes His judgment. Oh, Yaakov. Yeah. Oi, 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 right? Oi, look at the list. This guy. I'm not sure he should be in the Olam Haba. And just when they're about to send Yaakov to the wrong place, Yeshua will step in and say, this boy's mine. I paid his price. I was the ransom. If you've got any problems with this boy, take a look at my hands. Take a look at my feet. Touch my side. Mercy precedes judgment. And the scripture actually literally says mercy triumphs over judgment. And the ransomed of mercy, Yeshivah, will return and come to Zion with shrill ringing cries. Not with singing, guys. That's how we'll return to Zion. The Mizrahi ladies, just like when they're at a wedding, just like when they're celebrating at festivals of Hashem, will be making these shrill cries of joy. Yeah, Jews do this. Mizrahim, Eastern Jews, we do this. This is what the Hebrew means. It doesn't mean they'll come to sing, it's like, yeah, I shouldn't disrespect that. I can't help it. But you're at you're going, we'll come a-singing unto Zion, the everlasting joy will be upon their heads. That's lovely, but if you want to translate the scripture, you better do better than that. You better have some chutzpah. You better be, you better be showing me you know what it's about. Because we're going to Zion. We're not going la 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 la. Why? Because we use the word vesimchat. Simchat. It's like joy that bubbles out of you that you can't contain. Simcha. Simcha. Joy, olam, al-osham, it'll be on our heads. The head is the ruler of the body, the chief, just like Yeshua is the ruler of the church, the chief. So this joy will be the chief of our being. That's what that means. Will be on their heads. Sason, gladdening, take hold of. And grief, sorrow, anguish, sighing, groaning, and everything that is the progeny of sin, suffering, and pain will not just go away, it will flee like a banshee, terrified of the vengeance and the recompense of Eloheinu, the King who says he will come and save you. Baruch Hashem. That's it. Baruch Hashem. Yeah, you get your Pentecostal on. Ishti, ohev otach ishti. Get your holy roller on there. Does anyone want to comment over the top of my screaming now?
Just the she and then the her.
So she and her, again, it's referring first of all and literally to ethnic Israel, but also to all those who from the nations will accept Yeshua. Let me be clear, Yeshua is Jesus, who will accept Yeshua and become a part of what the New Testament calls the Commonwealth of Israel. Just like New Zealand has been a part of the Commonwealth of Great Britain, we don't then become British simply because we're part of the Commonwealth, but we benefit from being part of that Commonwealth. It's the same for believers of other ethnicities who come to faith in Yeshua. They become part of the Commonwealth of Israel, but they don't become Jews because they don't need to. God loves you as the ethnicity He created you. He doesn't want you to be a Jew. He wants you to be you. That rhymes, doesn't it? Okay, Brad, my brother.
I love this chapter, and I want to proclaim it over someone today.
Amen.
This week, 3 times I heard the same witness, and today I heard it today. Eyewitness standing there, that the mighty King walked into a place, got on his knees, gave his heart to Jesus.
Awesome.
And
awesome.
He's actually started to, because he doesn't want to live in darkness.
Baruch Hashem.
And neither does his people.
Baruch Hashem. That's right, now you're talking, sister.
Yes, I just want to really, proclaim this verse actually.
Speak.
For, the king and his people.
Amen. Amen.
So nā ko ihoa I hoko ai te kingi Māori ka hoki mai. Ka hara mai e ta waiata ki hiona. I rungi o rātou mahunga ko te haringa e kore e mutu. Ki aia te haringa e kore e mutu. Ka whiwhi I aia me ona imi katoa. Ko te koa me te hari. A ka rere atu ana te pauri me te aue. That he and his people would take hold of mercy and grief and sorrow and anguish and sighing and groaning will flee from them. Amen.